and then in a second you should see my screen. So what we're going to do today is to finish the Renaissance time period. Then we're going to listen to a lot of music because it's kind of hard to, all the stuff that we've been doing has been all like academic-y type stuff and like information. And as much as I find that interesting, I think you guys, some of you might find it interesting, but I think what you find more interesting is the actual like music part of it, because that's the part that's, that we're musicians, so of course we like that. So, all right, I'm gonna get this up. If someone, when Jonathan logs in, if someone can type a message in the chat that tells him to log into iClicker when he does join class, I'm thinking he probably fell asleep because I just saw him in the period. All right, so you can see my screen, yeah? All right, Kyle is losing his mind because he can see himself, as is Alex. What are you guys, freshmen again? Good Lord. All right. So I am going to go back to here. I think this is where we finished. Am I correct? Can you guys give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Is this where we finished? Wasn't it the pictures? Didn't I tell you guys to like remind me?
Yeah, I remember you stopping here.
Okay, so this is where we're gonna start today. So make sure that you can see the screen. And here we go. Jonathan, go ahead, iClicker, make sure you're there. All right, here we go. So at this point in time, you can see in the pictures of that we have on the screen, there is a much deeper complexity than we ever had before. They started doing details that they never had what we would consider the time to do before. They had blades of grass, the vines, if you have a leaf, you have the line that goes up and then the spirally things that go. I mean, like those tiny details were not in artwork from the medieval period, right? They weren't pre-Renaissance because they people didn't have the opportunity to be consumers of art. All right, art and music. When I say art, I mean art and music. And so they didn't have the opportunity to sit there and take the time to even draw it because no one was going to really take the time to look at it. So it was more like, here's the information. This is what you need to know. It was all still very religious prior to this. Obviously, there's angels here. You've got David and the here, and it's still very deeply religious, but you're starting to see things that are less so. This is the best example I could find. This isn't even a good example of Renaissance written music, but you can see it is starting to look like the music that you and I know today. So that's what that is there. Okay, so like I said, the music of this time period was still very, very religious. However, it was the beginning of the church letting go of their control of music composition. And even though things were very religious, they, in the secular music or in music that was played for households, even though it was secular or was played for families, it still had religious undertones. At the very minimum, the time signature, the most common time signature of this time period was 3/4. Okay, so the 3/4 dealing with the Holy Trinity. So even though we didn't really have, in this time, we didn't have everything be deeply religious, the undertones of it, the undercurrent was still religious. And even though music wasn't always written for the church, they still had themes that were based on the church. So it would say, like a line of music would say, thank God for the blue skies today. So it wasn't like a song that you would sing in church, but it still dealt with God and the relationship between humans and God. At this point, music was starting to be influenced by the art of the time. And no longer did the church say, hey, you don't have to be anonymous, right? Because back in the medieval time period, they said you have to be anonymous because this is an offering that you're giving to the church. It no longer had that. At this point, composers of music were able to actually take credit for the music that they composed, which was huge in the development of the music that we have today. Now, the second, or arguably the most important reason why the music was able to be developed was because of the Gutenberg. So the Gutenberg press was developed and created and manufactured and used during the Renaissance time period. So before the Gutenberg press, a composer would write music and then he would hand the music off to a scribe. The scribe would then sit there and copy the music over and over and over and over and over again. However, because it was written by hand, after the composer wrote it, if the scribe tried to write it, we are all fallible as human beings. And so, he got distracted by a hunger pain. And so he put what was supposed to be an A, he wrote it as a C because, he just wasn't paying enough attention. So it wasn't always perfect. That changed with the Gutenberg press. So with the Gutenberg press, the composer would write music, and then the music was then able to be copied word for word. So you had, or not word for word, but note for note. So the composer would write the music, they would hand it off to the press, and then the press would have it be completely copied identically. At this point, we were able to also unify musical language. So a bar line was a bar line, a quarter note was a quarter note. The note E was note E. So at this point, we were able to actually start developing that unity because it was being printed instead of handwritten. And in addition to that, the musical technique was able to be developed and adapted and kind of grown and stretched because people were able to see music much quicker. So if a composer wrote it and it got put onto the press and then they put out the music, then the people that
My
yeah.
mom's calling me. Hold on.
Okay.
My mom is calling me.
Okay. So then if that's the case, then they were able to say like, hey, I wrote this awesome new piece. It's da 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 da. And then the person took it and they're like, oh, wow, that's so cool. I'm going to let that influence my music. Whereas before they didn't have that option as they do now. Okay. The next thing is there are two composers, Thomas Tallis, who is, we're about to go on to the next page. I'll talk more about him. But Thomas Tallis and William Byrd were the most, you're good, the most, influential composers of the time period because the monarchy gave them exclusive rights to the Gutenberg press. No one else in the time period for 21 years was allowed to print music on the Gutenberg press. So because of that, their music dominated the time. And that's kind of a big deal. Now, Thomas Tallis, he was the first man who was a composer. He came in, they hired him, they gave him a house in a palace, and he served 4 monarchs. He wrote music for and composed music for the monarchs, and he was what is considered the best composer for the church during that time period because the church and the monarchy were one and the same, right? This is pre-Martin Luther, or right at the Martin Luther time, where they were still one unity. So when he served the monarchs, he was serving the church, and they were kind of hand in hand. He was a primary composer of choral music. This was still not a time period where instrumental music was a thing. However, his pupil, William Byrd, was a huge composer for instrumental music, and because of his influence, we have so much music and ability right now. Now, The two of them composed this piece, Canciones quae ab argumento sacre vocantur, which is Latin, and I have no idea if I said that correctly. However, they composed this piece of music together, and when they composed it, it was written for the Gutenberg Press. However, it was very poorly received. The people of the time period said, "I'm not interested in it," and there are many theories as to why. Some of them saying, like because this was during kind of like the I don't want to say Reformation, but it was during the change, right? And so because of that, some people were like not excited that they had this exclusive monopoly on the Gutenberg Press on printing music, and so people didn't like it, and it just wasn't well received, which is interesting considering both Thomas Tallis and William Byrd are major composers in this time period. So William Byrd, though, he wrote polyphony, he wrote piano, aka harpsichord music, and this thing called consort music, which was essentially music for specific instruments. It's a group. So like a group of clarinets, that would be a clarinet consort. A group of violins, that would be a violin consort. Okay. So, all right. At this point, we did have the development. Yes.
One question. I can't see the slideshow.
How? Leave the meet and then come back.
All right.
At this point, we had the development of dances, right? So if you have ever seen any sort of, courtly movies, so movies where you had the opportunity to see the ballroom dances, this is really where that was developed and became a thing. So the first dance that was developed was the pavane. This was slow and stately. So the music would have sounded like this. It would have gone. So imagine a couple together dancing. They were, however they would hold themselves, and it was like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, slow and stately. After the pavane dance was the galard. So it started with the pavane, so it was slow and stately, 1, 2, 1, 2, to the pavane, which was faster, and in 3, 4. So da 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 da. Da, 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 da. And in your head, you can probably picture all those ballroom dances where like you see the people dancing going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that movement. So from slow and stately, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you can kind of picture that and if you wanted to look up pavane dance or galard dance, you can do that and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, the next dance that was created was the courante. This was a French style of music. It was also in triple meter, but it wasn't just 3/4. It could have also been 6/8. Okay, and it was specific to the fact that it had specific instrumentation. So it had 2 violins, a viola, and a harpsichord that would play. They would seat themselves at the front, or center of the ballroom, and they would play the courante music, and then the people would dance to it. So just like the galard, where it was in 3/4 or in triple time, if you will, it's similar to that, except it just had a different style. So here, the last thing is they had this consort, which was from the previous slide. The consort could be a piece of music that was composed and played like a dance. However, it wasn't necessarily a dance piece. So the consort could have been an individual playing. It could have been a group of similar instruments. The English name for a group a consort is the English name for a group of similar instruments. So you're going to have a woodwind consort, and it had, like I said, clarinets or clarinet consort, woodwind consort would have been clarinets and flutes. String consort would have been violins and violas. Fun fact. So it's the key thing is that it was similar instruments. The fun fact is that during the Baroque time period, Let me turn my notes. During the Baroque time period, they actually created what is called a broken consort, where at this point you had not just the what the heck is it called? Similar instruments, but you had the broken consort, so it was instruments of all kinds coming together. This broken consort is what was considered a Baroque orchestra, like the Baroque time period orchestra. So the Baroque time period is where our music that we play as instrumentalists, as baritones and percussion and clarinets and saxophones, this type of music came from the Baroque time period, and it's like we're starting to see kind of the progression. Okay, the last piece of music, this wasn't a dance. The last piece of genre of music that we have is actually called a madrigal. This was all secular vocal music. Like I said before, just because it was secular doesn't mean that they didn't talk about God. It just meant that it was not meant for church. Okay, so you would not hear a piece of madrigal music in a church. It would just be music that was meant to be sung or heard at a house or at a party or at a ball. Okay, not meant for church. It was always unaccompanied. You will never have a piece of madrigal music that had any sort of accompaniment. No harpsichord, no violin, no piano, nothing. And it was always 3 to 6 voices, no more than 6. And voices meaning not people's mouths, but parts, 3 to 6 parts, voices. Okay. And it was sung in polyphony. So they all didn't sing the same thing. They all sung different notes, polyphony being very important. And then at this point, instrumental music continued to develop, but it was still not as popular as choral music. So choral music is still dominant during the Renaissance. All right. And the reason being, they just didn't have the instruments for it, right? We're still learning. We had a whole bunch of instruments, trumpets, guitars, sackbuts. Those are all from the medieval time period. We're now creating more new instruments. The next one is called the crumhorn. This was a woodwind instrument. It was similar to the bagpipe in how it was played. And meaning how you would blow into it. And then right here, if you can see that J shape, purposely made the sound come back to your face so that you can hear yourself. This is actually a expanded version of this print right here, which you can see is a baptism happening up here, and she's playing the music right here, and you can see the singer and the lyra right here, and then she's playing the crumhorn. Okay? All right. The next instrument was the harpsichord. Now, the harpsichord was a brand new instrument in this time period. William Byrd is credited as the most prolific harpsichord composer of that time. He brought this instrumental music to the forefront because of the harpsichord. Now, here on the left, I have a picture of the harpsichord. As you can see, it's very ornately decorated. There are 2 levels of keys, which look similar to ours. So they do go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, just like ours do. But obviously it's not the same. And here's a guy playing the harpsichord, so you can kind of see it. It's very similar to the baby grand, right? It looks like a baby grand. It has the keyboard, it has the opening. You can see there are strings here. But as you see with this gentleman right here, it is significantly smaller than any piano that you're going to see. The sound of the harpsichord is like a combination between the piano and the guitar. Okay, there's no sound like it. It's very, very distinct and totally different than anything before. Now, I am going to go over here and we're going to listen to some music. So I'm going to start at the very beginning. John Dunstable, he was the man, if you remember, with like the very pronounced nose. This is his. So this is the very beginning of the Renaissance period. This is the music. So make sure that you can hear it. Here we go. Thumbs up if you can hear it. Thank you. All right, at this point, I should see everyone's faces, please. Not your ceiling fan, your face. Thank you. All right. So that one right there, John Dunstable Quampulcra S. He was the very first composer that I talked about last week, who wrote in the Renaissance. The next one is William Dufay. He is the next one in order of all the ones. These aren't the only ones that wrote for the Renaissance. These are just the ones that I'm going to introduce you to. As you can hear in this one, it is going to be a mix of both vocal and instrumental. This was very rare during this time period. Understand that. This is very rare. Here we go. Now, as you can see, there is more, but I want to keep going with what I've got. So, we're here. Okay, this one, here we got Thomas Tallis. He was the one that, like I said, was the Four Monarchs. He composed for the Four Monarchs. He had the monopoly on the Gutenberg, and he was solely vocal. So, here we go. I really could listen to that forever. And then here is Tallis's pupil. This is, if you look at the title of each of them, it's titled The Battle, and it's start with the battle. Then you'll see. I'll say it out loud also, but you'll see. Summoning soldiers is what this part is about. Like I said, this was written for harpsichord. This is where you're really going to start to develop the instrumental music that we know today. You see it's very similar. Now you've got the march. Okay. The last part, or this next part, would be the march. But as you see, it keeps going. So it's going through the entire battle, and you can obviously orally tell that he's trying to create this scene with what he's doing. Okay. The last composer we're going to listen to today is Monteverdi. This is going to be an example of madrigal music. As you're going to see, there's only 5 people there. So madrigals are always small groups. There's going to be no instruments playing. And this is going to be was composed by Monteverdi, who's probably maybe the only composer you might have heard before me introducing you to all the other ones. Maybe not, but here you go. And he's towards the end. This is the very end of the Renaissance period, okay? Very end. Okay, I'm going to pause that there. I need you to all please have your iClicker open. Here we go. As a way for me to see what you have or have not been paying attention to, we're going to do a very quick pop quiz. So go ahead and get your iClicker out if you have not had it yet. All right, here we go. So they're going to be all different types of answers, and the first one is going to be a pinpoint one. So my question is, which is not the name of an instrument that was created during the time periods we have learned thus far? So go ahead and put your cursor on the one that has not been learned thus far. There is only one correct answer.
I don't see anything.
Yeah, nothing's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no.
Okay. Go out and come back. Sometimes that happens.
All right.
It's loading, but I think my Wi-Fi is garbage.
No, it says you just checked in.
Okay, because it's coming through on my end, so it's hard for me to, like, it came on my end. You know what I'm saying? So,
It just says I'm in.
Yeah,
I
closed it.
I'm thinking it might be that you guys didn't fully get into iClicker yet.
You checked into class, but it looks like your
I checked
subscription's
in earlier.
expired.
Yeah, exactly.
You will need to renew your subscription.
Listen, Kyle, that's exactly what I'm talking about. If you didn't watch the video that I posted on announcements that says exactly how to get into iClicker, and that's what it is. You didn't do the last and final step to get the correct iClicker. So
With the code?
I
use the code.
Just relax. So what I need from you, okay, is you just read it out loud. It says your subscription has expired. Your subscription isn't expired. It's free if you did what I told you to do. So what I need you to do, and I don't need you to say anything else after this, what I need, if any of you guys are having trouble with this because you didn't do it, go to the announcements, watch the video, do the steps that are posted on the video. If that still hasn't worked, then you must come see me tomorrow doing tutorial and I will walk you through it. That's all that I can do right now. Okay. So if you are working and it works for you, great. If you haven't, then it is
Miss
because
Child.
of this. Okay. So go ahead and mute yourself. But right now, I'm just going to continue going. So the ones that were able to do this, the answer is yes, it was the guitar. That is the instrument that was not created during this time period. All the rest of them were created during this time period. Okay, the next question is, what time period introduced counterpoint? This is another target question. So what time period introduced counterpoint? What time period introduced counterpoint? I'm thinking since I have only 2 responses that many of you are not seeing this because many of you have not done the full thing. So make sure that you do that because this is how, this right here, what we're doing is an example of what our test is going to look like. All right, the answer for this, only one person got it correct. It was the Renaissance period. It was the Renaissance. Okay. What is the medieval? This is going to be a short answer. What is the name of the medieval equivalent to our scales? What is the name of the medieval equivalent to our scales? Put something down, hit send. Ready, set, and here we go. Nice. 2 of you got that correct. Modes is correct. Modes is correct. Okay. Roughly, how many years, this is going to be a numeric question, how many years did the medieval time period last? Roughly, how many years did the medieval time period last? Numeric answer. Okay, let's see what we got. We've got all over the place. Look at that again. Guys, it was hundreds, like literally 700 to 800 years is how long that lasted. Why do we not have the names of composers from the medieval time period? Why do we not have names of composers from the medieval time period?
Miss Burke, I took me to the support site. I
Okay,
did exactly what Miss
stop.
Childs did.
Not now.
But like, I
No,
didn't do it. Like,
no, I know you do, but this was for weeks, and so you're gonna have to figure it out. Not right now, and then come see me tomorrow at tutorial if you still can't figure it out, and I will walk you through it, but not now.
What time is the tutorial? I keep asking, no one's answered.
It's 1:30. It's on every piece of paper that I've ever given you, Kyle. It's all over the place. It's on a snapshot.
Alright.
All right, let's see what we got. Answers here. Some of them were not documented. When they wrote a piece, it was for God. Okay, perfect. Believe that. Perfect. All right, those 2 look good. Great answers. And what was the most common time signature in the Renaissance? Were you even paying attention today? Let's see. What was the most common time period of the Renaissance? Ready, set, and dun dun dun. The answer is, bless you,
Thank you.
3-4. Perfect. Yay. We all got that. All right. So I'm going to end this class with here. At this point, you should see that you 100%, I know you do, because once you hit X on here and you hit the X and you close out, there's a bell with the little number, that is your exit poll, boys and girls. If you have a question, you write the question down. If you do not have a question, you have to write, I do not have a question. Okay? This is how we're going to keep track of this. It is finally working. I know it because I see it on my screen. So make sure that you are doing